মক 8টা কি দিয়েছো পরে? দিয়েছিলাম স্ক্রিপ্টটা, পাঠাই নাই। ওকে যিনি পাঠাইছিলাম মক 8-এর ইয়েটা মন নাই, দেখতে হবে। আচ্ছা, আমরা এই টেক্সটে ছিলাম, ক্লাসটা রেকর্ড করে রাখি। এই টেক্সটের এই পুরো টেক্সটে দেখি, এটা আমাদের লাস্ট টেক্সট। তোমাদের যারা ক্যান্ডিডেট আছে তাদের তোমাদের লাস্টের এটা হবে, এই পেপারটা লাস্ট আমি পেপার সলভ করে দিব এটা। সো উই ওয়ার ইন কোয়েশ্চেন 3, এটা আমরা স্টার্ট করেছিলাম, and so we're going to finish this entire paper no matter what. This is the last paper we will do. So any doubts and questions you might have, fix it from this particular last minute classes. এগুলো থেকে fix করে নাও। আচ্ছা, so the text was the first text, and we were talking about her experience of this girl, and we've written something, যতটুকু মনে আছে এই যে এতটুকু লিখেছিলাম। এটা কার? এটা না, এটা না, এটা তো কোচিং এর। এটা ছিল, হ্যাঁ 18. So we were over here and we talked about items listed above, all play a vital role in safety. Okay, we were talking about her using descriptions, right? আচ্ছা, আরেকটা জিনিস আমরা এখানে দেখেছিলাম, একটা কন্ট্রাস্ট রাইটার ইউজ করেছিল। কোথায় ছিল এটা? এখানে, এই যে এখানে কোথায় যেন একটা কথা ইউজ করেছিল, কন্ট্রাস্টটা ছিল এটা, terrified of creatures jumping. সে বেসিক্যালি ওই যে ফ্লাইজ গুলো নিয়ে কথা বলছিল, ওই যে ওয়ার্মস এখানে বলেছিল এটা। Where was it? I'm trying to look for it. এইখানেই বলেছিল, stepping off 40 meter, কোথায় বলেছিল? এটাকে ডাউনলোড করি, তাতে সার্চ অপশনও নেই। Whatever it was, the writer talked about এই যে তোমার the paragraph was, let me write it, এরকম ছিল, কথাটা এরকম ছিল যে she was talking about how, first of all, abyss ডেকেছে এটাকে, she calls this cave an abyss, shows how uncertain she finds it, and abyss বলেছিল, and then she said it had slippery walls বলেছিল writer. But then later on, she kind of talks about how she found adventurous, একভাবে ছিল, এখানে একটা ওয়ার্ড ইউজ করেছিল, pummeling, what was pummeling, আর কি কি ইউজ করেছিল, ওই যে glowing worms, that's all we found. Wilderness, underground wilderness. So you can narrate this, you can interpret this as something dangerous, or you can interpret this as something adventurous. Both would be fine in whatever way you want to write. এই যে glowworms, as we went through. So এটা juxtaposition, এই টেক্সটের থেকে মোটামুটি সবগুলোর থেকে এটা একটা juxtaposition. Admiring, so she's basically depicting that chaotic experience, মানে কি বলবো, কন্ট্রাস্ট করতেছে between terror and beauty and terror, এই দুটো জিনিস কন্ট্রাস্ট করতেছে রাইটার। Cave is both beautiful and weird at the same time, scary at the same time, pardon me. and this is a juxtaposition. So the writer এটাকে এখন juxtaposition বলতে পারো, এটাকে contrast বলতে পারো. We can say the writer uses a juxtaposition in her text to contrast between. Here when I say contrast, I don't mean it as the device, but as the word itself. Contrast between, to contrast between the terror or wilderness bully, wilderness of the cave or abyss বলতে পারো, since writer এখানে abyss বলেছিল, but abyss টা আমি পরে বলতেছি, of the cave with its quiet beauty বলতে পারো. glowworms কি sound করে? No, they don't make sound. করতেও পারে, I don't know. না, with its unique beauty. এটা বলতে পারি in a way. আরে বিউটি বানান কি? Okay. While she describes, how does the writer describe? এই যেখানে একটা ওয়ার্ড ইউজ করেছিল না, epsil or something, একটা ওয়ার্ড এখানে ইউজ করেছিল. So she used a word over here. Where was it? It's so hard to find the word. There you go. So this whole thing, epsil down, she's going down. Where is she going down to? She's going into abyss. Describes এভাবে বলা যায়, as an abyss with slippery walls. Did we talk about this? Slippery walls, right? Depicting, what does it depict? Depicting the harsh environment, but later states how she found the glowworms, or later we see the writer admiring the glowworms. But later we find her admiring the glowworms. Now, here is a interesting metaphor we can do. In this darkness, she calls this place dark. The word abyss, did we give an analysis of the word abyss? Yes, we did. So we can link করতে পারি যে এই abyss এর মধ্যে, এই chasm এর মধ্যে, this empty void, the writer found the glowworms to be admiring for a few reasons. One is they are beautiful in of itself, but the second is the glowworms gave that little light the writer was looking for, a source of hope in a way. You could narrate that in such a way. It would be an kind of hyperbolical একটা meaning দিচ্ছ, but that's a nice way of also thinking about it. যে in this dark void, the only source of light was their headlights on their head and those glowworms that she found flying around, and she found that mesmerizing. And their light, although was very very faint, to her that light was enough. That was bright enough than 1,000 bulbs. এরকম টাইপের একটা কথা. ডার্কের সময় ছোট লাইটে অনেক অনেক আলো দেয়. That's what she's doing. That's why she's so mesmerized about it. আর কি বলেছিল এখানে? হ্যাঁ, so we're going to talk about this. এটা লিখি, admiring the glowworms. This shows, despite the journey not being smooth for নাম কি রাইটারের? Victoria, the writer still found aspects of the journey to be memorable. Moreover, Are baba. She keeps repeating the word abyss. She keeps repeating the word abyss. Now here, we did not talk about that it's a dark void. We just said it's a bottomless chasm. So we are gonna kind of like extrapolate that definition over here, suggesting the what are other ways of saying dark? Dark কি বলতে পারি? আর কি বলা যায়? Dark বলা যায়, non-luminous বলা যায়, gloomy বলা যায়, murky বলা যায়, আর কি আর খুব মাথায় আসতেছে না. For suggesting how she found the journey to be, or how she found the caves to be dark, how she found the caves to be dark and abyss তো malicious বলা যায় বা malevolent বলা যায়. Could say anything. Malevolent, evil. And that in that darkness, the little faint lights of the glowworms shined bright in the eyes of Victoria, giving her well, there was a flicker of hope, a glimmer of hope. Well, that's actually kind of nice. Glowworms do glimmer is like a small faint light. The glowworms were the glimmer of hope to the writer. এরকম টাইপের কথা বলতে পারি. So does it even go? So we can say I think the glowworms in this dark void was the glimmer of hope to Victoria. We're just going to refine this a little bit. So let's write এটা নিচে চলে যাচ্ছে. বেশি বড় করব না, এটা ছোটর মধ্যে লিখবো আমরা. So these little creatures in the dark void were a glimmer of hope for Victoria. There you go. Now we will have to talk about the subheadings. Now, how would you talk about these subheadings? Normally, we would talk about subheadings as in it would break down large portion of texts into small bite-sized chunks, and you know that analogy that we're all used to. Here, however, it's serving a different purpose. What I would say, and see if it's wrong or not, so basically তার journeyটাকে একটা chronological order-এ সাজাচ্ছে. First was the flying fox, then was the leap of faith, then the final challenge. She's kind of going through the journey, right? And একটা জিনিস খেয়াল করি, each phase sounds more intimidating than the previous. The leap of faith, flying fox, it makes interesting. Flying fox, that alliteration over here, it's kind of like actually that interesting জিনিস. What am I gonna? What is that type of device or those kind of stuff? You could say, like when you hear the word flying fox, it gives you an idea of something else, like a fox flying, but actually means something else. What is that device or linguistic thing called? Do you know? এটা জানি না, এটা ইয়েতে পড়ানো উচিত ছিল, বাট এটা তুই কথা বলতে পারো, subheadings নিয়ে বলতে পারি, alliteration এটা flying fox, but she kind of মানে tells us what that is at the end. So দেখি, এটা খুবই একটা vague compound, flying fox. It opens the door to interpretation. But anyways, we will talk about the subheading. So the writer uses subheadings in her text. Victoria, now we're going to do this in a different way. We're not going to say the writer is all that যদি format use করে থাকো, যেখানে আমরা বলি the writer has presented her ideas in a credible manner, এগুলো তো দরকার নেই. excuse me. So আমরা দিতে পারি, বলতে পারো actually. Victoria's text, or Victoria narrates her text or her story, her experience, বলতে পারো, of this journey, of this uncertain journey, in using now subheadings. এটাকে একটু বলতে পারি chronological subheadings. Chronological subheadings. Or you could say subheadings in a chronological order. The message is still there. It doesn't make a difference. Then you're going to give the example. Squid অনেকটা like when she says, we're going to copy this. Any two, remember, always quote two. And we're going to quote the other one. এটা এই কোড করি, এটা sounds more intimidating. ওটা নিয়ে কথা বলবো. Final challenge. These subheadings, now we're going to give the common inference data, but একটু different করবো এটা. Makes each of her sections sound more intimidating than the last, or than the previous. Oops, capital হয়ে গেছে. Holy God. Than the previous. Creating, forging sounds weird. Building climax and tension amongst the reader, amongst the readers. Subheading the social readers are development. Also the common data, it breaks down her entire journey into small, manageable bite-sized chunks for the readers to digest and navigate through. It could be better. It should have been better, but there you go. So we are in the experience. And I will talk about this particular part. Am I nearly there? Or am I there yet? Right? Shout into the abyss. Now, what I like to talk about this is যে writer এখানে despite আমাদের টাইমের জিনিসটা কি আছে মানে good যে writer এখানে despite being in this abyss, she is key. She knows very well nobody's going to answer that question. It's just she's letting out her emotions, and this shows her way, her raw way of interacting with the surrounding, right? So এটা তো ক্যারেক্টারিস্টিক রাইটার দেখাচ্ছে যে her journey is epic. এই জার্নিটা যে epic কিভাবে সেটা বোঝানোর জন্য এটাকে বলি, কিভাবে বলবো, এটার সাথে দিলে বেটার হবে. Am I there yet? এটা কখন? Trying to get too much. The rope burn. আচ্ছা. এটা এখানে দিয়ে চলো, দেখি যায় কিনা. Again, এটা তোমরা নিশ্চয়ই এক্সামে করতে পারবে না এরকম, বাট আমি করতে পারতেছি, so that's good. দেখি এখানে যায় কিনা. কিভাবে বলি যে Victoria's journey, again, এখানে জাস্ট বলা যাবে না Victoria uses, এরকম কিছু দিয়ে বলতে পারবা না. আমাদেরকে এখানে Victoria's journey only gets worse. She explains one of her difficulties whilst the zip line. Was it a zip line? Going through the zip line, or it just remember she explains one of the difficulties. She explains everybody. One of the difficulties she explains is how unbearable the burn ow, the burn from the rope was becoming. পরে ঠিক করতেছি দাঁড়াও becoming এরকম কিছু একটা. One of the difficulties, she explains, is how unbearable the burn from the rope from the zip line was becoming. And out of pain, the rider shouts এটা, this thing over here. Now what this does, if you can do a good perspective understanding, a good perspective understanding sometimes can be equivalent to a level 3 or 4 word analysis. Level 3 word analysis. 4 এ যাবে না, শুধু একটা perspective understanding কখনো সেই লেভেলে. এখানে যেটা দেখতে পারতেছি যে আমার এটা হচ্ছে the idea that she screams into the abyss, যেটা বারবার সে বলতেছে, আমি ইচ্ছে করে এটা কোট করতেছি. Despite abyssকে ডাক দিলে কি abyss সাড়া দেবে ডাকের? Despite it having no senses, এক ধরনের personification বলতে পারি এখানে, senses or ability to respond, কি ডিপিক্ট করে? Depicts that Victoria's fear, নাকি? Fear was both raw, মানে real and primal বলি. By shouting at a abyss to void. So literal void. কি show করতেছে? It shows her way of tackling with her emotion, I get tackling with the ominous surroundings, tackling, it shows her way of tackling her emotions with the ominous surroundings, on a personal level বলি, আর কি হতে পারে? As if the cave was some sort of like a living entity, as if the cave এটা এই যে indirect তোমার personification. So এই analogy দিয়ে বোঝা যাবে as if she was personifying the cave, and that it was a living entity that she had to confront to survive. বেঁচে ফিরতে হবে যাই হোক দুনিয়াতে, এরকম টাইপের একটা কিছু. দেন আমরা এটা বলতে পারি this would go well because এখানে মর্মান্তিক একটা অবস্থা, এটা পরে যায়. ওকে, experience, expectation, experience বড় হইতেছে এগুলো, বাট এগুলো তো লিখতেছি, টাইপ করছি, এটাকে খাতায় লিখলে আবার বেশ বড় হবে. আচ্ছা, আর কি বলা যায় দেখি, আর কিছু আছে? এই যেখানে একটা ওয়ার্ড অ্যানালিসিস দেওয়া যায়, pummeling. So the water was pummeling down, and you had to go around it and up. So এটা একটা হইতে পারে. এটা নিয়ে একটু কথা বলি. That she describes the waters to be harsh and merciless. বলতে পারি এটা. এটার literal definition দিব আমরা, and then what it means and how that is making this environment description even more vivid, if you wish. এটি আমাদের লাস্ট ছোট একটা দিব আমরা, ছোট একটা অ্যানালিসিস, ওয়ার্ড অ্যানালিসিস, বেবি ওয়ার্ড অ্যানালিসিস, লেভেল 3-4 লেভেলের. কাজ এখানে আসলে এটা নিয়ে তেমন কোনো বড় কিছু দেওয়া যায় না, এটা এরকম না. and then afterthought it gay will conclude. Navigate through. Okay, so Victoria uses the it is this an adjective এখানে কি এটা কি adjective এ কাজ করতেছে um as if the water was falling down and হ্যাঁ এটা তো verb এখানে adjective now. So this is a verb. So what we're going to say is the Victoria uses the verb, this word over here. Huh? G. Okay. Victoria uses the verb pummeling to describe the harsh and merciless motion. এটা কি পানির waterfall নাকি এটা? হ্যাঁ, waterfall. Motion of the waterfall. একটা না দুইটা? Two. Okay. So she's using the word pummeling to describe the word waterfall. Okay. The word pummeling, oops, not this, এটা literally means, but connotes, whatever you want to talk, whatever you want to use, literally means to, আমি যতটুকু জানি, it's like hitting something with a force. And আবার কি meaning দেয়? Batter, well, merciless, batter, pound, rain, blows on. আর কি আছে? হ্যাঁ, so basically is that মানে motion of something hitting it hard means to literally depicts a motion with how do we say this? I want to say that the word pummeling depicts the motion of brutal force or something. Does that even go? Not really. No. Do we emotion এদিকে না, ওয়ার্ডটাকে ডিসক্রাইব করবো, এটাকে ভেবে যাবে না, এটাকে literally means a continuous how do you even spell that? Organic sector depicts a continuous force with a great magnitude. Physics and দিকে magnitude same thing, মানে ফোর্সটা যে big অনেক, এটি বোঝাচ্ছে এখানে, right? Continuous force but relentless বলতে পারি, continuous এর আর কি সিনোনিম আছে? I'm not ChatGPT, কি আছে? Relentless doesn't even go, continuous something like that. You get the idea. Literally, আচ্ছা এখানে যে literally দিলাম, এটা কি literal meaning এটার? It's the same thing. It's just hitting something continuously with a great force, এটাই, with a great magnitude. Now, what it's doing here is showing the magnitude of the water falling, like waterfall to waterfall high. That's what's going on. I get it. But at a huge waterfall, like the last তুমি যদি দাঁড়াও and the water falling on you, এটার force অনেক extreme হবে. So we force যে কতটা মানে big pictureটা দেওয়ার জন্য she's using this word here. And এখানে বলতেছে carefully placing your feet as it went. এটার ফিয়ারটা দেখাচ্ছে, এটা যে কতটা ডেঞ্জারাস. She's fearing, I would finish me off. Waterfall would finish me off. Now, what is this device that she was scared that the waterfall would finish me off? Is this any device would finish me off? You could say this is a এটা একটা personification. এটা অনেকে যদি বলতে চায় hyperbole বলতে পারো, but I say would be a personification. It is a personification. So we've got a personification and the word to endless. So we would do something as such with great magnitude. This word alone signifies how dangerous. So I have to talk through. The word pummeling literally means a continuous force with a great magnitude. This word alone signifies how dangerous and heavy the water was. which implanted a fear in the writer, right? Implanted a fear in her. And whilst climbing, the writer was very cautious and exhausted. And her fear was she personifies the waterfall. Again, personifying the waterfall, that she feared that she would finish, like the waterfall will finish her off. This again, this personification again reflects that this waterfall, this particular waterfall in this cave was brutal, right? That's what it is. So personification. Okay. So we can say this word alone. কি বলা যায়? This word alone um, signifies but emphasizes how dangerous and powerful বলি, brutal না বলি এখন, powerful the water was, waterfall না, the water was, implanting fear in her, on a writer. As she climbed, we see her to be vigilant and cautious. That's not how you pronounce cautious. I still got it wrong. Ki korche ekhane. Guru. Cautious. There you go. Ki bolbo eta? Personifying the cautious. দাঁড়াও, ঠিক করতেছি. She personifies the waterfall, imaging that it could eat her. Eat বলছে কি বলছে? Finish. So it could finish her off. Me off বলেছিল, me, but আমরা এখানে her ইয়ে করতেছি. That's what it is. If you want, you could change it and give this heart, telling that you have changed it, or you could leave it like that. This basically suggests যে এটা ছিল অরিজিনালটা, but তুমি তোমার টেক্সটের জন্য ফিট করার জন্য you're giving this. Or you could just to play safe, it could just wordটাকে ইয়ে করো, the verb finish her off. That's better. Play safe. Examiner মনে করো নেশা করে আসছেন, and he or she or whatever the hell the gender is, they didn't like it, তখন মার্ক যদি কেটে ফেলে, don't do that. Okay, finish her off. Again, this personification again shines light or reinforces personification. কি করে? Again, or just reinforces বলি, reinforces the idea just how brutal and overwhelming, that's not how you pronounce it, WS, overwhelming the waterfall was in that cave. Again, পিচি word analysis, nothing too big. তেমন নাই এখানে কিছু ওরকম মারাত্মক লেভেলের কোনো ওয়ার্ড অ্যানালাইসিস করার মতো। অরেঞ্জ জুস, what are you going to do with this? এটা কি অ্যানালাইসিস করবা? আচ্ছা, the writer ends the text on a positive note. আমি এটা পুরো এদিকে নিয়ে আসি. I don't want to go back and forth. I find it really annoying. নিজে লিখি, so I have space. Perfect. আচ্ছা, so আচ্ছা, কি বলেছিল? এই যে, it was finally time to take the wetsuit off. এটা একটা পজিটিভ নোট, এটা একটা পজিটিভ কথা. It sounds like she was looking forward to kind of, take her, excuse me. She was looking forward to get her wetsuit off the moment she put it on. So this shows that she's kind of back time. No, আসে কি অবস্থা? ঠিক মতো মক দিয়েছো না তাড়াহুড়া করে এসে পড়েছো? বাহ, ভালোই তো স্যার, আমি হলে দিতাম না। আচ্ছা, আমরা এই যেটা করছিলাম, তোমারই অ্যানালিসিস কোশ্চেন গুলো দরকার, তুমি থাকো না আমাদের অ্যানালিসিস কোশ্চেন। এটা আমাদের লাস্ট পেপার, এই পুরো পেপার আমরা সলভ করবো উইথিন দ্য নেক্সট উইক, সেকশন বি অ্যান্ড এ। সো এটা থাকো, এটা লাস্ট। আই উইল নট সলভ সেকশন এজ এন্ড বিজ ফর ক্যান্ডিডেটস এনিমোর। এটাই তোমাদের লাস্ট। সো এটা রেকর্ডিং হচ্ছে, এটা বাকিটা দেখে নিও। আচ্ছা, so it's time to take the wetsuit off নাকি? আর কিছু বলেছে? Okay, it's time to take the wetsuit off and wetsuit and shoes off. This shows that the rider was, she was finding it suffocating. এরকম, in it. The rider, we can say that the rider ends her text. এটা বলতে পারি, the rider ends her journey, or ends on a positive note. On a positive note, she says, she mentions how, she mentions, কি মেনশন করেছিল? How she was excited, how she was excited to, finally it was time, right? So to put this, to take her wetsuit and shoes off, right? To take her wetsuit and shoes off. The word, or the phrase, the word finally time, the phrase D, finally time, implements, এটা হচ্ছে আপনার আরে বাবা, আই দিয়ে তো এটা হচ্ছে আপনার জুন 2018 রিজিওনাল পেপার। ফালতু একটা পেপার, রিজিওনাল পেপার গুলো খুবই জঘন্য হয়, এর জন্য এগুলো করি আমি, বিকজ আই হ্যাভ নো লাইফ। সো এটার কোয়েশ্চেন 3 করছি আমরা মনে হয়, কোয়েশ্চেন 3, ইয়েস। ওকে, সো implements. Now, when does somebody say this? Her journey didn't seem good. She didn't really enjoy the journey. And the phrase finally time implements how she has been looking forward to this moment from the moment she put her the wetsuit and shoes on, right? Depicting how the entire experience, how she found these equipments maybe stifling and stuffy, and the journey to be exhausting, right? That's the main message. So এটাই লিখবো সাজিয়ে গুছিয়ে, এখানে তেমন ওয়ার্ড অ্যানালিসিস নাই, এখানে এন্ডিং এ এসে পড়েছে, দিব এটাতে পার্টিকুলার নাই। সো এটা বলি, এটা ইমপ্লিমেন্টস বা এমফাসাইজেস বলি, এমফাসাইজেস কি, just how long, it felt ages long, she had been looking forward to কি, this moment, right? আর কি বলা যায়, moment, এখানে বলা emphasize that how long she's been looking forward to this moment ever since she put on those equipments. Are those equipments? Is shoes equipment? What are those? Wetsuit, it's oxygen mask না, এটা কিভাবে বলা যায়, দাঁড়াও, put on, from the moment she put, এটা একটু repetitive লাগতে পারে, that I'm gonna fix it later. Wetsuit and shoes on. This phrase কি করে, conveys বলি, her impatience বলা যায়, অধৈর্য হয়ে গেছে, her impatience and relief, খুশিও আবার অধৈর্য হয়ে গেছিল, রাইট? রিলিফ, এটা কি রিলিড লিখেছিল, what the hell is রিলিড? কি রে ভাই, তো আমি লিখেছিলাম কি, ও এটা এফ ছিল, I'm like, dude, what the hell? Relief, there you go. Her relief. এটা একটা হাইলাইট এগেন, এই যে আমাদের জাক্সিপোজিশনের মতন, যে রাইটার এত কঠিন একটা জার্নির মধ্যে, she was dying but then she sees the glow worms and she's like, oh wow, কত সুন্দর. For a moment she even forgot that journey was hell. Here it's also showing how the journey was brutal, but again shows the satisfaction of coming back home alive in one piece. এরকম টাইপের একটা কথা, right? Because she was scared she's gonna die. Waterfall খেয়ে ফেলবে, ওই জিপ লাইনে ওয়ালের সাথে বাড়ি খেয়ে মরে যাবে, তারপর আর কি কি হয়েছিল অনেক কিছু। Her life was miserable in this, right? So এটা বলা যায় highlighting the contrast between Allahu Akbar, between the exhausting বলি বা tiring বলা যায়, tiring journey and the satisfaction কি ভাই, satisfaction SA হবে, satisfaction of reaching the end of this journey. Now wait, let us go together. বলে বলে লিখলে যে কি আল্লাহ কি হয়েছে এটার, ever since. The writer ends on a positive note. She mentions how she was excited to get the wetsuit and shoes off. The phrase finally time, I'm dying, decomposition হচ্ছে আমার. The phrase finally time emphasizes just how she had been looking forward to this moment ever since she put on the, ever since. কোনটা excited to get rid of, হ্যাঁ বলতে পারো, get rid of course, the wetsuit and shoes off, to get rid of, off আর বলতে পারবো না তখন, get rid of তখন এটা হয়ে যাবে, get rid of the wetsuit and shoes. The phrase final time emphasizes just how long she had been waiting forward to this moment, to this moment, okay, to this moment, ever since she, এটা pretty like duru moment, there you go, repetitive like this, but no. This phrase conveys her impatience and relief, highlighting the contrast between, এটা একটা contrast, ওই যে তার জীবনটাই contrast, এই বলে না আমার জীবনটাই contrast, এই অবস্থা। আচ্ছা, আর লাস্টে যে the good ending এখানে যে দিয়েছিল, তারা যে ক্যাফেতে বসে বসে আড্ডা দিচ্ছিল, রাইট, এই যে everyone before me, I made it out. The phrase journey, দ্বারা এটা কই বসানো যায়, between the journey, and end of this journey. This point is cemented from her quote, I made it out. Again, shining light to her gratitude, or to her কি বলা যায়, again shining light to how grateful she was to make this journey out alive, to make this journey out alive. You could develop that, you could, you know, it inference, you can make a little bit development, but where we will we met again in the cafe to see our photos, reminisce, she reminisced our oops, the awesome day. That's a contrast, again juxtaposition. So her entire thing was like, ওই যে থাকে না মানে আমি কি ভালো দিক দেখবো না খারাপ দিক দেখবো, কোন দিকটা দেখে আমি আমার জার্নিটাকে ডিসক্রাইব করব, খারাপ দিক দেখে কি আমি দুঃখী হব না মানে ভালো দিক দেখে আমি সুখী হব, কোনটা, এরকম একটা অবস্থা। So we see that মানে she didn't like the journey, but now that she's alive, she's like journeyটা সেই হয়েছে কিন্তু, but in the cave she was screaming, এরকম একটা অবস্থা। So we see that আবার delete করে ফেলছে, the writer is seen sharing this moment, sharing the moment with the people she embarked, how do we say this, was it people, the writer is seen sharing a precious moment or memorable moment with the people she embarked this journey with, or how do you say this, পিপল বলতে কয়জন ছিল বলছে এখানে, যে সে একা না, না এখানে তো ইয়ে ছিল, একটা গ্রুপ ছিল। এভাবে বলতে পারি, একটু হয়ে গেছে, এটাকে একটু ঢং করে বলি যে সিন শেয়ারিং দ্য মোমেন্ট, আরে বাবা এইভাবে বলি, with those who embarked on the journey with her বা alongside her, creating, এখানে কি বলেছিল memorable না, but bread and reminiscence about our, the writer mentions how they all reminisced about it, reminisced about the journey. Okay, now if you want a little, again you don't have to give it, but the word reminiscence denotes the idea of thinking back to a memory that you found memorable and that sticks with you, right? So চাইলে এখানে দিতে পারো লাস্টে যে ওয়ার্ড অ্যানালিসিস দেওয়ার কোনো দরকার আছে, দরকার নাই, দিতে পারো, but I wouldn't give it. How they all reminisce, দিতে পারো, এটা অপশনাল, ইউ ক্যান, মানে এটা দিয়েও you can move on, না দিয়েও you can move on. Reminisce means to, or connotes to the idea of looking back on a memory that is dear to you, memory that you found memorable বলে, memorable money memory, it's an unnecessary repetition. Memorable that stays with someone, clearly showing how clearly someone, আরেকটা জিনিস, someone, and the fact that she summarizes her journey, right? And what is this word? She said, we met, reminisce about our awesome day, right? So this is an adjective. So she summarizes her day using the positive adjective awesome. Highlights that despite the journey being কি বলা যায়, harsh বলেছি, I think we did say harsh. What is a synonym? Harsh বলেছি একবার, বা স্মুথ না, আনফরগিভিং বলা যায়, being unforgiving. The fact that she wasn't alone and had people to share the fun and fear made it memorable. আর এটা খুবই একটা মানে low invested একটা alliteration, but maybe could make that better. Maybe, just maybe. We'll never know. But that would be your answer. Try not to make it too long and yap nonsense. এখানে তেমন আহামরি কোনো word analysis ছিল না, so we couldn't do those kind of like fully invested word analysis. But that is your answer. হ্যাঁ, অবশ্যই পসিবল। আমি কথা বলে বলে করছি, এই জন্য টাইম লাগছে। অবশ্যই পসিবল, কেন পসিবল না? এটা বাদ দিয়ে দিই। বেশি পেজ না তো, 1 পেজ, 1.5 পেজ, হাফ পেজ এরকম। আমরা তো আরো বড় বড় ইয়ে লিখছি, এটা এখানে ছোট কাটছাট করতে পারবে ডেফিনেটলি, বাট এটা you have to pull it off in 30 minutes. You're allowed এটা থেকে ছোট ছোট জিনিস কেটে ফেলতে পারবে, এখান থেকে মনে করি শর্ট করে আনতে পারবা, but this is an average answer you have to write in 30 minutes or so. Okay, Nokshi, do you have questions? I bet you have a lot of questions, but you never ask. Section A, জি কিছু বলেন। এক্স্যাক্টলি, এটা আমাদের লাস্ট ক্লাসে হয়েছিল, আপনি আসেননি, বাইরে ছিলেন। আর আজকে এটা শেষ করে দিয়েছি আমি। I'm gonna move on, but এটা রেকর্ডিংটা দেখে নেবেন নিশ্চয়ই। Okay, let's keep moving. Let's move. Time is ticking. আচ্ছা, question 4. 10 to 14, Emma describes her first impressions of the raft. ছোট একটা ব্যাম্বু দিয়ে যে বাঁশ টাইপের একটা নৌকা। 10 to 14, এটা উপরে যাচ্ছি নিচে যাচ্ছি উপরে, এটা এই যে raft. Again, picture থেকে কিছু নিও না। So it's the Whirlpool Rapids, Whirlpool Margaret. আচ্ছা, 10 to 14. এখানে stable. The raft was very stable. এই যে এখানেই সব অ্যান্সার তোমার। The raft was black. Don't write this. Maybe that would be এখানে সবগুলো অ্যান্সার। Raft, enormous, seemed না, resting at his moorings. I don't know what the hell that is. That is stable. So the raft was enormous. That is a valid answer. Enormous লিখে দিও না, one word answer তারা রিজেক্ট করে। Never write one word answer. The raft was enormous. Moving on. Question 5. English is so easy, right? So easy. Okay. Where is it? Using lines 15 to 26, identify two of the things Emma notices. 15 to 26, I think over here. Acha. Two things, right? But once they moved out into current surface, her under her began to ripple. So she saw this. It began to ripple. She noticed it began to ripple. That will be one of our answers. Aropori. Large waves of contraction, like giant. এটা কি নকশি দেখিতে বলতে পারে কিনা? এটা কি device? Congratulations, Simidi. Okay, so we're finding devices here. And spray came in upon, and Emma knew the rapids. Wait, এটা narrate করছে একজন। Margaret narrate করছে Emmaর কাহিনী. So Emma notices something. But once they moved, Emma can notice করেছে, which looked so decorative, so much like abar, like icing from a distance, were actually after all. So she noticed that there were ripples, right? That's one thing she noticed. Arki, there was a lot to talk. What the hell? There was a lot of talk later after why the 10th run would have failed so badly. This text looks so boring. এত weird জিনিস নিয়ে কেন কথা বলতেছে? After the other 9 had gone out without a hitch. কার 10 হারাই গেছে, কার 9 কি হয়েছে? What? All she saw, okay, front of the tipping down. So she noticed এই দুটো. I got my answer. Screw the rest. পরে দেখবো ওগুলো. I found my answers. So I found two things. One হচ্ছে the raft was tipping down. আরেকটা হচ্ছে যে the surface underneath. Wait, কোশ্চেনটা কি ছিল? She notices about কি নিয়ে? Raft নিয়ে কিছু নোটিস করে? No, she just notices. So there were ripples underneath. I guess that would be a valid answer. I must check again. 26, no? Backward overheads were jumbling to high. You could say that. Well, from sliding up the instead of the ball across middle, half snipping towards the backhand. Basically, the ripple এসেছিল, and then she noticed the ripple, and then now she's seeing that the thing is tipping down. So the raft, there was a rephrase করে লিখবা যে her began the surface underneath, the surface under the raft began to ripple. Now to our good friend, question 6. Describe question হবে, জানা কথা। Question দেখছো না দেখি তো বুঝছো describe question হবে. Explain how the writer describes what Emma experiences. So it is interesting. Emma is not the writer. Emma is the girl who's experiencing whatever the hell she's going through, her nightmare. The writer is describing. So if you say the writer uses this to describe her journey, এটা কিন্তু completely contradiction. এগুলো করলে marks চলে যাবে তখন. So careful. এটা ভালো করে নোট করো. The writer is narrating. She uses an alliteration to describe Emma's experience, not her experience. So be careful. এটা দেখেছি অ্যান্সার লিখেছিল স্টুডেন্টরা, এখানে বলছে the writer uses it is simile, এটা wrong, to describe a writer's journey না, এটা হচ্ছে Emily's journey. Anyways, so again we expectation আগের pre-experience, during experience, after experience. কনসেপ্টটা এটাই হবে কাজ এমা যে কাহিনীতে যাচ্ছে সেটা আমরা রাইটার বুঝাবে কিভাবে, well she's gonna be using alliterations and similes. এখানের similes কি হবে, এখানে ধরো a giant throat swallowing, so this she's kind of creating the image that um একটা বড় একটা সাকশন পাইপ যদি হপ করে পানি খেয়ে ফেলে ইটস গোনা মেক আ লিটল swirl whirlpool, এর জন্যই whirlpool মনে বলেছিল এখানে, ওই আইডিয়াটা এখানে ইমপ্লিমেন্ট করার জন্য যে ধূপ করে দেয়ার ফ্লাইং, মনে করো জাস্ট ইমাজিন ইউর ইন স্কুবা বোট অর হোয়াটএভার দ্য হেল, কি বলে এগুলাকে ছোট ছোট যে প্লাস্টিক এগুলো থাকে, স্কুবা বোট আই ডোন্ট ইভেন নো দে কল্ড, or I forgot ছোট বোট গুলাতে you row your boat gently down the stream and you see some humpback whale opens his mouth and at a whirlpool you kind of going inside black hole মতো. That's what she's trying to kind of because ওটা হলে কি বোট তোমার টিল্ট হবে, সামনে পিছে টিল্ট হবে, that's what she's explaining. এই যে এক্সপ্লেনেশনটা যে কতটা ডেঞ্জারাস এটা করার জন্য সে সিমিলি ইউজ করতেছে, টু ইমপ্ল্যান্ট or to vividly to make এটা কি vivid একটা ইমাজিনেশন দেওয়ার জন্য রাইটার এটা ইউজ করতেছে so that এমার সিচুয়েশন যেন রিডাররা বুঝতে পারে. That's how you would write your answer. বুঝলা কি আসছে? আমি নাকি ম্যাথ পারি, that's a compliment. Acha. Next, we haven't even started reading it. The Whirlpool Rapids, adapted by a short story by Margaret Atwood. Margaret, huh? So when she was 21, Emma was an extremely narrow. Emma had an extremely narrow escape. Now this is a hook. The writer starts with a hook that gets the readers involved or they want to know. Now, the title, if you desire, you can talk about the title. Nobody's holding you back. But I will start with this. That a suspense recruits, extremely narrow escape. From what? I want to know. She had a near-death experience. What was it? When was it? Where was she? How did that happen? So many unanswered questions. Guess what? You as a reader, you're now intrigued. D. Hook to etai kore. Exactly. So this is a common introduction start query. We would start something like that. The writer starts off with a hook, and blah blah blah. I don't want to go through the answer. I'm just text us pore dibo if time allows, and if time allows, time আছে. Let's see. দেখা যাক. It was a freak accident. It was a freak accident, and the fact that এটা কি কয় পেজের? Oh, ছুটি তো. And that she was there at all was an accident too. Okay, this is like a self-deprecation tone. The result of a whim and of knowing someone. Interesting text. This has a different vibe to it. The person I'm just gonna read it for the sake of reading. We're gonna devise it a we're gonna talk about it. The person she knew was a man about her own age. Is this romance? Oh my god. Man of her own age called Bill. He wanted her to come on to a test run, he said. The travel agency he was working for, developing a new kind of adventure down the Whirlpool Rapids. Whirlpool Rapids. Why is this a tongue twister? Below the Niagara Falls. On a big rubber raft. Rubber raft. Alliteration, but nothing much. Well, it is actually interesting. Normally rafts could be eagle. I was trying to talk about this. Raft gives you an idea of a wood raft. I mean, bamboo, but it could be a rubber raft. They done the run 9 times so far, and it was perfectly safe. But they weren't ready to open the public until they had one more test. So XT credibility এখানে কেন আনবো আমরা এখানে? এটা তো describe question, যায় তো না তেমন। বলা যায় 9 times to show। এখানে একটা জিনিস হচ্ছে, if you don't know, they are probably testing এখানে এজেন্সিরা। well it's like a amusement park। এখানে যে ট্রেনটা কাজ করে, the Ferris wheel is safe, they would run it down, অনেক মানুষ বসায় বসায় এমটি করবে, they testing it। so um I think um I think Purine, I'm just making some assumptions. They had to do the 10th run, 10th test করার পরে they would open to the public. Maybe they didn't do that. They were like, nah, 9 times safe ছিল, lost 10th time safe হবে। And if the hell bad, they open the door. Everybody comes, and AJ Emma is one of them. Guess what? She's into this hell. I think that's what's gonna happen. Let's see. It struck him as a kind of thing that might appeal to Emma. Emma said yes, and at once. Now, this is an interesting way. Like, regional question group feels like a story. Narrate করতেছে section. Well, that's what it is. She is narrating Emma's story. The raft was black and enormous. Now, it's gonna be stupid. It doesn't go. It's just a big করতেছে। Well, there was a text which text ছিল about some writers said the night was black, and that had a double meaning: ominous, scary, something's gonna happen, suspense। এখানে সেটা যাচ্ছে না, raft black দিয়ে আর কি করবা এখানে। And enormous and seemed resting on it, এটা পড়েছি আমরা এখানে। So এইখান থেকে আমাদের experience start হয়ে যাচ্ছে in a way। So experience না, stable, they scrambled on experience শুরু হয় না, on the board and found seats at the front end. They scrambled. Okay, they were among the first to arrive and had to wait for others. Emma began to feel slightly let down and to wonder what she'd come. So now she's kind of like, well, you're the one. She said yes, and now she's like, "Ano aslam." So this is depicting that normal emotion. The journey to jar, like, yes, বাড়িতে jabo, yes, গ্রামে jabo, yes, ঘুরতে jabo, and you're on the car, you're like, "Keন আসলাম?" Kind of like that. The raft was too big, too solid. টুটা রিপিট করেছে, and this repetition এটা কি করতেছে? I would narrate this as it's showing her frustration. It's too big, it's too solid, এটা ভালো লাগে না, she's complain করতেছে, too big, too solid. It shows that she doesn't like it. That's one of them. If you guys want to narrate this in a different way, interpret this in a different way, you're free to share ideas. And it was like a floating car park, so she's using আমরা এখানে অনেকগুলো পেয়ে গেছি। We saw like a floating car, that's one simile, that's a second simile, that's a third simile, so many similes. Now you would be, if you're someone really smart, you would think about these 3 similes and you would see which simile is worth writing about, কোনটাতে বেশি লেখা যাবে। And once they moved out into the current, the rubber surface under her began to ripple in large waves of contraction, like a giant throat। So এটা নিয়ে কথা বলতেই হবে। And spray came in upon them, and Emma knew that it was a rapids, which had looked so decorative and so much like an icing from a distance. She's basically saying that দূরের থেকে it looked marvelous, it looked divine. The moment she went close to it, she's like, that looks nothing, it's harsh, it's scary, I'm drowning, this is not what it looked or actual. After all, there were some beautiful thrilled noises from the other passengers, and then the genius noises. What the hell? Genuine noises, less thrilled. Okay, so basically they're like, yeah, they're screaming out of joy, and then when the roller coaster goes down, nobody's screaming out of joy, they're screaming out of fear. এরকম একটা মনে হয় depict করছে এখানে। There was a lot of talk later about why the 10th run should have failed so badly. Okay, let's see what's going on. After the other 9 had gone without a hitch, okay, all she saw was the front of the raft tipping down into a trough deeper than they had hit. Trough is a waiver. I forgot উপরেটা নিচেরটা. Come on, O level physics ভাই. উপরেটা নিচেরটা, guys help me. একটা waiver, crest and trough. নিচেরটাকে trough বলে. Fix me if I'm wrong. So we need to বুঝাচ্ছে is dipping down. Trough is like we maximum negative amplitude. You're going down. That's what they're kind of describing. Deeper, is it? So that's what it's a nice word actually. Then they'd hit like a foam abar not while a foaming wall of water rose, found ourselves in alliteration. Above them, the raft should have curved sinuously. What the hell? Sinuously sliding up to the wave. Instead, it buckled across the middle, the front half snapping towards the back like a beak of another word. No, another simile, like a beak of a bird closing. Oh, like a beak of a bird closing. What image does that depict? Like a beak of a bird closing, snapping towards the back. ভেঙে আর কি দুই ভাগ পড়ছে. Emma and Bill and the other people in the front row shot backwards over the heads of the nest, who were jumping in heaps, boarding, now submerging. Bottom of the V. What kind of text is this? It's a weird text, isn't it? Something struck on the side of her head. Okay, this is bad. Something hit her. A boot. I know, right? সবগুলো basically over here what happened was এখানে rafta, it tilted down. Since they were coming into the whirlpool, it's like a tornado, it was spinning around. That's what caused the raft to kind of tilt. And as it tilt, it hit the bottom মনে হয়. Instead of buckled across the middle, the front acha tilt, Titanic basically. Titanic এর অবস্থা. এটা tilt করে, since it's rubber, like it forces on, it's just front half snaps towards the back. ভেঙে দুই পিছে পড়ে. Like Titanic in a way. I don't know how to imagine it. Like ভেঙে পিছনের side stern to পিছে পড়ে, বাউটা সামনে. সামনেটা না stern পিছনেটা, I forgot. I think stern to পিছে পড়ে, বাউটা সামনে পড়ে. Like the front of the ship, I think that's called the bow, and the stern হচ্ছে পিছনেরটা. দুইটা দুই সাইডে পড়ে. It's like দুই ভাগে ভাগ হয়েছে. And the people in the front were shot backwards, ভেঙে পিছে গেছে. Okay, and they were in their water now. Something struck on the side of the head, a boot, perhaps. এখানে হাইফেন ইউজ করছে একটা ক্লাইম্যাক্স ক্রিয়েট করার জন্য. She was under the water. এই যে পড়ে গেছে পানিতে সবাই এখন. এবার খেলো. রাফটিং হয় এখন, সুইমিং কম্পিটিশন হয়ে গেছে. Later, she learned that the raft had flipped and the man had been trapped underneath. So it's a bad experience. One of the things we've seen, well, oh my god, the expectations seem to be kind of positive. However, the journey is anything but positive. মর্মান্তিক অবস্থা, মরে যাচ্ছে, পড়ে যাচ্ছে, মাথা বাড়ি গিয়েছে, একজন ডুবে পড়ে গেছে, একজন খুঁজে পাওয়া যাচ্ছে, একজন পা ভাসতেছে. You can imagine the chaos. Trapped underneath, and well that she had been flung clear, but underwater she did not think. So পানির নিচে now, they're under the water. How are they gonna come up? The thing is moving. পানিটা নড়তেছে অনেক, perhaps like a whirlpool. So you're not কি হবে, you're gonna go underneath, পানির নিচে থাকবে তুমি. Something else made her hold her breath and struggle towards the surface. What was it? I want to know. What was it? Which she could see above her. Okay, white and silver. Climax create করতে. So this feels like a novel. She's creating climax. There, এখানে যে writerটা, she wants us to kind of get into this. আমরা একটা whirlpool এখানে এখন. So her eyes must have been open. Her head rose up. She gasped air and sucked sucked under. So she was sucked. So এখানে right, Emma desperate. এখানে basically the experience went bad. The ship, the raft tilting, নাচানাচি করছিল, dancing was bad enough, but here is where things go bad. So এখানে দেখাচ্ছে she was underneath, she couldn't breathe, she was having a hard time, and she got sucked under again. Okay, the water tumbled and boiled. Oof, tumbled and boiled, and Emma fought it. This is a very, very good word. Tumbled and boiled. Do you know what these words mean? Nokshe. Tumbled and boiled. Boiled বুঝাতে পারছে, kind of like it was like bubbling in a way. Huh? Okay, tumble জিনিসটা কি? It's kind of like মানে roll করে জিনিসটা কি. How do I মানে পড়ে যাওয়া, tumble. How do I explain? পড়ে যাওয়া, হ্যাঁ. Like you are standing in front of a shitty stairs and you tumble down the stairs, you fall, right? So পড়ে যাওয়া, it's that মানে rolling over এরকম বোঝানো হচ্ছে একটা motion এখানে. The water tumbled, the water rolled and boiled, and Emma fought it. Emma fought it. This word, this phrase here is showing how desperate it was. Emma was brave. She was filled almost to bursting with an energy that came from anger. Oof, I refuse to die in such a stupid way. This is showing her key will. Like, no? Her will to live. She was underneath now. She was sucked under. Kind of like enemy like this. Protagonist. পড়ে গেছে পানির মধ্যে, ডুবে যাচ্ছে. And then he thinks about his deceased father. And he's like, nah, আমি এখানে মরবো না. And then something magical happens. Some hand comes, God and হাত আসে পানি দিয়ে. যে আসো বাবা উঠো. He's kind of giving that. So it's climax পাচ্ছি আমরা এখানে. I refuse to die in such a stupid way. This is her inner thoughts, monologue. And she's going to use this anger. This anger is fueled, and this anger is going to act as a catalyst to save her. Was how she expressed this afterwards. যে পরে বলেছিল. So it's an inner thought. Desperate, এরকম flight or fight response গুলোতে inner thought গুলো খুবই powerful. There were rocks, and she collided with several and was bruised and scraped. Bruised and scraped. ব্যথা and ছিলে গেছে এরকম অবস্থা. But nothing more hit her head. And after what seemed like an hour, এরকম situation, it shows that time feels long, but was only 10 minutes. এটা খুব common একটা time যে dilate হয়ে যায়, dilation of time in such critical situations. For the writer, she felt as if time had dilated in a way. The current was less, and she found she could keep her head above the water and actually swim out. So for about 10 minutes struggling, এই মাথা বের করে to breathe, and she gets sucked under. She hits her head. She's dying. She's struggling. Now the current is gone. She can now finally peek outside. She propelled herself toward, like a propeller. So you kind of verb use করতেছে to describe how physically draining that thing was, towards the shore, and finally dragged herself onto the small rocky beach. Her running shoes were gone. Panita somewhere lost. She must have kicked them off, though she couldn't remember doing it. Okay. Or maybe they had been torn off. Like, it was bad enough. You kind of able to say Panir current at the dangerous chilo that even the shoes kind of like torn off. Okay, I guess. She wondered how she was going to get over the rocks without shoes. She must have been cut. Her clothes were certainly ripped, and there was a lump on the side of her forehead. Kind of feels like cartoon here, Tom and Jerry. Jerry এসে মাথায় বাড়ি দিয়েছে, all of a sudden একটা বড় একটা lump বড় হয়. So those things, it's humorous for a reason. I don't know why I found this humorous. There was a lump on the side of her head. ওই যে বাড়ি খেয়েছিল এখানে কোথায় জানি বলেছিল না, something struck her head. ওই বামটা এটা কিছু একটা বাড়ি খেয়েছে, ফুলে আছে কার্টুনের মতন. She was taken to the hospital and treated for shock, interviewed on television. Her picture was briefly in the papers. কোনটা এটা? কই? I want to see her. Acha. But the most obvious effect of the incident on Emma was her strong subsequent belief that she was invulnerable. Afterthought এখানে একটু কঠিন afterthought দেওয়া যাবে. She had been thrown into the whirlpool rapids of Niagara Falls and had lived. Therefore, nothing could touch her. She felt as if she was like a god. Omnipotent power or মধ্যে. Niagara Falls or waterfall or something, you battled the waterfalls and you lived. You walked away, you walked out unscathed. And that would be a lie. You were not unscathed. You were barely alive, hanging in. But that is a miracle. She walked in a bubble of charmed air. This is how she felt after this. This is a story to be just like a tall tale. Is that you can tell this to people. This is like a story that would make you feel, man, if you're not bothered by sharing this every time, আমাদের time আছে না, পক পক করছি নিজের সাথে, time আছে, we'll finish it really quick. So every time she would say, do you know I went to Niagara Falls and I was engulfed by the waterfall, and guess what, I fought for it for 10 minutes and I'm alive. That's something to be said. That's very মানে গর্বর একটা জিনিস. That's why she walked in a bubble of charmed air. At times she imagined she could almost see shimmering around her like mist. Again, it could be depicting how the way she sees things has changed. Like, in fact, the mist that rose from the falls themselves. This is an interesting way to end. She's depicting the mist. এভাবে অনেক অনেক narration থাকতে পারে. What's the best narration? She said she walked in a bubble of charmed air, which at times she imagined she could almost see shimmering around her like mist, like, in fact, the mist that rose from the falls themselves. This is, um, there are many interpretations. Um, কি বলা যায়? এটা একটা figurative language in a way. এখানে রাইটারের যে courage সেটা বেড়ে গেছে. And হ্যাঁ, তোমার এখানে, the mist, the mist, what এই যে waterfall যে পড়ে and the mist that comes out. She's describing এইটা এরকম বুঝাইছে, she walks in a bubble of charmed air, kind of like যে তার atmosphere-টা কিরকম easier হয়ে গেছে. আগে she didn't have these kind of beliefs, and like she didn't ever believed herself. Now she does. She is confident. And এই পার্টটা যে এখানে imagine that she could almost see shimmering, which at times মানে ওই বাবলটা এসে দেখতে পারতো. Ow, my bag fell. দাঁড়াও. Oops. Huh. It is a bubble of charmed air. Like, the air is now thick, it's twinkling, it's bright, it's, positive. And she swears sometimes she can see that air shimmering around her like a mist. বুঝো না জিনিসটা? It's like ওই যে aura বলো, যে aura. তুমি হাঁটতেছো, those enemy things, দরজা খুলে, and then smoke comes out of the body, like kind of like that. She's saying that now she's so stress free. Her self-esteem rose. She's now more cautious. She likes herself in a way. The confidence বেড়ে গেছে, and she now walks in a bubble of charmed air. She's confident. And sometimes that ashpasher air, she's kind of, again, it's all kind of a figurative description. Her air is so pure and so strong. Sometimes she can see the air shimmering like a mist. The fogger moton ashpasher. It's like a cloud that surrounds her now. Just like the clouds, ওই যে waterfall-এর আশপাশে যখন পড়ে, that গরম thing, I guess, steam যে বের হয়, এটার সাথে একটা করতেছে সে. It's like nothing can touch her now. এরকম টাইপের বলো না, she feel এটাই তো বলছে, nothing can touch her now. She feels she's like the waterfall. That's what kind of like end করে. And the ending is really strong. আমরা দেখতে পারতেছি এখানে যে she was vulnerable. A desperate situation, she hung on, she clutched to whatever belief she had that she would live. She has to live. She will get out of the situation alive. That belief is what pedaled her through this sticky situation. And at the end, we see a very good resolution.